Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to polyrhythms, everybody starts struggling. But it's very easy. We have the first situation, this one here, we have two eighth notes and triplets here, and we can decide that we play the upper notes in the right hand and the lower, of course, in the left hand. And then we can use a phrase. And for this situation I would use the phrase malt, beer and chips. And I will use the German word for malt beer is Malzbier. It sounds much better. So malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. And now we are a fan club of this situation here and we say malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. And now comes the next fan club. This one. 16th notes in the right hand and triplets in the left hand. And we have another fan club. We have the classical music, the composer fan club. They two composers, Hindemith and Ravel. And they always scream Hindemith and Ravel, Hindemith and Ravel, Hindemith and Ravel, Hindemith and Ravel. And now we have the two fan clubs we have here. Malts, beer and chips, Hindemith and Ravel. Malts, beer and chips, Hindemith and Ravel. And with these two fan clubs we can solve this rhythmical problem. Here you see that we have to say not Hindemith and Ravel or malts, beer and chips. We can say Hindemith and chips, Hindemith and chips. The next one is this funny situation. Normally we go home and say, not with me, but here we can say, it's very easy, we can say the combination of these two is only malts, beer and Ravel. Malts, beer and Ravel. The composition of Hindemith and Ravel and malts, beer and chips. We can say malts, beer and Ravel. Malts, beer and Ravel. And then the next one looks even funnier. So that's very easy. We can use, instead of Hindemith and Ravel, we only say Hindemith, Ravel. Hindemith, Ravel. Like in a demonstration, we go and say Hindemith, Ravel, Hindemith, Ravel. And then we have already solved this funny situation. Next one is an order. This one. We order malts beer. We say malts beer, Ravel, malts beer, Ravel. And this one looks also funny, nearly impossible to play, but if we know these two phrases, Hindemith and Ravel and malts, beer and chips, we can say Hindemith, chips, Hindemith, chips. And then we have already solved these problems. Now let's have a look how they are played on the keyboard. To practice, we can play fifth in both hands. We can use C, G, also here, and in the right hand, of course, the same. Here we have malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. And with malts, we are always together. Malts, beer and chips. Or if we have this Hindemith, we are together, both hands, when we say hin. Okay. Malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. And make it groovy. Malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. And if you wish, you can move downwards here to the A and E, F and C and G and D. And we can make malts, beer and chips and change every time the bass in the left hand. Malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer. And you can also use notes if you like. We can say we play here the triplets and here the eighth notes. Malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips. You can move upwards. Malts, beer and chips. Malts, beer and chips, and so on. Let's go to the next one. We have Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit and Ravel. And it's malts, beer and chips. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Malts, beer and chips. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Let's do the same thing. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Or you can play notes. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit and Ravel. And a very famous piece is by Frédéric Chopin, the Fantasie Impromptu. There you have exactly the same situation here. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit and Ravel. Okay, and with these two slogans here, we can also master this one. It's Hinde, mit and chips. Hinde, mit and chips. It has to be groovy. Hinde, mit and chips. 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 Hin. Or you can play notes. Hinde, mit and chips. Hinde, mit and chips. Hinde, mit and chips. And you can move upwards. Hinde, mit and chips. Okay, the next one is also very easy if you can use this phrase. Malts, beer and Ravel. Malts, beer and Ravel. Malts, beer and Ravel. Sorry. Malts, beer and Ravel. Malts, beer and Ravel. Malts, beer and Ravel. Malts, beer and Ravel. Malts. And of course you can also use the notes. Malts, beer and Ravel. Malts, beer and Ravel. Malts, beer and Ravel. Okay, then we have this situation. Hinde, mit, Ravel. Hinde, mit, Ravel. It's nearly the same as Hinde, mit and Ravel. Hinde, mit, Ravel. The demonstration. Hinde, mit, Ravel. 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 Hin. Or the same thing with some notes. You can use the exact same notes as I have used in the previous examples. Now, we come to our order. Malts, beer, Ravel. 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 Malts. And this situation is often in music from the classical period or also in the romantic music. For instance, the Moonlight Sonata, here we have Malts, beer, Ravel. Malts, beer, Ravel. Then we have the rhythm for this Moonlight Sonata, the first movement. So let's go to this one. That one I've never seen before, but it's also in order. In the mid, chips. Means in the mid, bring me chips. In the mid, chips. In the mid, chips. In the mid, chips. In the mid, chips. In. And it has to be groovy. In the mid, chips. In the mid, chips. In the mid, chips. In the mid, chips. In the mid, chips.